The door clicked shut, and my heart stopped. I was alone in the Thompsons' living room, babysitting their 6-year-old, Max, when his older brother, Ethan, strode in, his leather jacket creaking, his eyes locking onto mine like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. I'd seen him around the neighborhood, always distant, always untouchable until now, when he turned the lock with a deliberate twist and leaned against the door, trapping us in a silence that screamed louder than words. My name's Jamie Carter, 18, a senior at Lincoln High in a sleepy Ohio suburb where everyone knows everyone's business. I babysit for the Thompsons every Friday to save up for college, but nothing prepared me for this night. Max was sprawled on the couch, engrossed in his cartoons, oblivious to the storm brewing in the room. Ethan, 20, college dropout and the town's resident mystery, hadn't been home in months. Rumors swirled about him, fights, secrets, a past he wouldn't talk about. And here he was, 6 feet of intensity, staring at me like I was the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. Jamie, right? His voice was low, rough, like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes. I nodded, my throat dry, clutching the edge of the kitchen counter. Max giggled at the TV, but the air felt thick, electric. Ethan stepped closer, his boots heavy on the hardwood. You're good with him, he said, glancing at Max, but his eyes flickered back to me, searching, probing. I didn't know why my pulse was racing, fear, curiosity, or something I wasn't ready to name. I'd always known I was different. Growing up in a town where different meant wrong, I buried it deep, dated girls I didn't love, and smiled through Sunday sermons about sin. But Ethan's gaze stripped me bare, like he saw the parts of me I'd hidden even from myself. Why'd you lock the door? I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. He smirked, but it wasn't cruel, just knowing. Didn't want interruptions, he said, and my stomach flipped. Max yawned, breaking the spell. Jamie, can I have juice? He asked, oblivious. I moved to the fridge, grateful for the distraction, but Ethan followed, leaning against the counter beside me. You're not like the others around here, he said softly, his breath warm against my ear. I froze, juice carton in hand, my mind screaming to run while my heart begged to stay. This wasn't just about babysitting anymore. The night stretched on, and Ethan didn't leave. He helped Max with his Legos, his hands steady but his eyes always finding mine. We talked small things at first. School, music, the way Max snorted when he laughed. But every word felt like a step towards something dangerous, something I wanted but couldn't name. By the time Max's parents were due home, Ethan was sitting closer, his knee brushing mine on the couch. You ever feel like you're drowning in this town? He asked, his voice raw. I nodded, unable to lie. He reached out, his fingers grazing mine, and the world tilted. Then the doorbell rang. Max's parents. Ethan stood, his jaw tight, and unlocked the door. See you around, Jamie, he said, but his eyes promised more. As the Thompsons walked in, I forced a smile, my heart pounding with a secret I wasn't sure I could keep. This wasn't just a night. It was the start of something that could break me or set me free. The next Friday, I was back at the Thompsons, but my mind was still on Ethan. Max was building a Lego spaceship, chattering about astronauts, while I replayed that night, his voice, his touch, the way he'd looked at me like I was more than just the kid next door. I kept glancing at the door, half hoping, half dreading he'd walk through it again. He didn't. Not that night. But Monday at school, I saw him leaning against his motorcycle in the parking lot, sunglasses low, watching me. My best friend, Sarah, nudged me. What's with you and Ethan Thompson? She teased, but her tone was sharp, like she'd heard the whispers about him. Nothing, I lied, but my cheeks burned. Sarah didn't push, but I felt her eyes on me all day, like she was piecing together a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve. That afternoon, I was mowing the lawn when Ethan appeared, leaning over the fence. "You avoiding me, Carter?" he called, his grin playful but his eyes serious. I shut off the mower, wiping sweat from my brow. "Just busy," I said, but my voice cracked. He vaulted the fence, landing lightly, and walked toward me. "Busy hiding, maybe," he said, stopping close enough that I could smell the leather of his jacket. "You don't have to hide from me." We ended up in my backyard, sitting on the old swing set my dad never took down. Ethan talked about leaving town after high school, chasing freedom in cities where no one cared who you loved. "But I came back," he said, his voice heavy. "For Max. For other reasons." His eyes met mine, and I knew I was one of those reasons. My chest tightened. I wanted to ask about the rumors fights, a boyfriend in Chicago, a night in jail, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I told him about my own dreams, college, maybe New York, a place where I could be myself. He listened, really listened, his fingers tracing patterns in the dirt. "You're braver than you think, Jamie," he said, and I laughed. "Bitter. Brave. I'm terrified." He reached for my hand, his grip firm. "Good. Means you're alive." We started meeting in secret late nights at the park, early mornings by the creek. Ethan was a wildfire, reckless and warm, pulling me out of the shadows I'd lived in for years. But every touch, every stolen glance, came with a cost. My parents noticed my late nights, my distraction. Sarah asked questions I couldn't answer. And the town, with its watchful eyes, felt like a tightening noose. One night, Ethan kissed me under the stars, quick and fierce, and I felt like I was flying. But when I got home, my dad was waiting, his face hard. "Who's been driving you around, Jamie?" he asked, and I froze, the lie bitter on my tongue. The lie I told my dad was clumsy, something about a study group, but his eyes narrowed, and I knew he didn't believe me. That night, I lay awake, Ethan's kiss burning in my memory, a mix of exhilaration and dread. I was falling for him, hard, but the weight of our secret was heavier than I'd expected. At school, the rumors started. Someone saw Ethan's motorcycle near my house. Whispers followed me in the halls about me, about him, about us. Sarah cornered me at lunch, her voice low. "Jamie, people are talking. You need to be careful." I brushed her off, but her words clung to me. Careful wasn't an option anymore. Not with Ethan. He was waiting for me after school, parked under the oak tree by the football field. "Heard the gossip yet?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes dark. I nodded, my stomach twisting. "They don't know anything," I said, but he shook his head. "They don't need to. They'll make it up." He told me about Chicago, how he'd loved a guy named Lucas, how it ended in a fight, how he'd come back to Ohio to escape the fallout. "I thought I could leave it all behind," he said, "but then I saw you." We drove to an abandoned quarry outside town, the kind of place kids went to drink and dream of bigger lives. There, with the wind whipping through the trees, Ethan told me about his fights with his dad, how he'd been kicked out at 17 for being himself. "I don't want that for you," he said, his voice breaking. I wanted to promise him I'd be fine, but the fear in my chest wouldn't let me. That night, I babysat Max again. Ethan showed up, like I knew he would, but this time, Max was asleep upstairs. We sat on the couch, closer than we should have, the TV muted. "What are we doing, Ethan?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just pulled me into him, his lips finding mine. It was deeper this time, desperate, like we were running out of time. And maybe we were. The next morning, my mom found a text on my phone from Ethan, just a heart emoji. But it was enough. "Who's this?" she asked, her voice sharp. I stammered, my face hot, and she didn't push. But the suspicion in her eyes was clear. I knew then that our secret was fraying, and the town was closing in. The air in my house felt different after Mom's question. Every glance from my parents carried a silent accusation, and I stopped sleeping, my mind racing with what-ifs. Ethan noticed. "Of course. You look like you're carrying the world," he said one evening, pulling me into the Thompsons' garage while Max played inside. I wanted to tell him everything, how scared I was, how much I wanted him, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, we kissed, hidden behind stacks of old boxes, the smell of motor oil and dust around us. It was reckless, but it was all we had. "We can't keep doing this," I said, pulling back, my voice shaking. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then what? You want to stop?" His eyes searched mine, and I couldn't answer. Stopping meant losing him, and I wasn't ready for that. School became a minefield. The whispers grew louder, and someone scrawled "fag" on my locker in black marker. I scrubbed it off before anyone saw, but the word burned into me. Sarah tried to help, but even she was pulling away, her friendship strained by secrets I couldn't share. I felt like I was splitting in two, the Jamie who loved Ethan and the Jamie who had to survive this town. Ethan started pushing for more. "Come with me," he said one night, parked by the creek. "We'll leave. Start over somewhere new." His voice was fierce, but I saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear I felt. I wanted to say yes, to run and never look back, but I thought of my parents, of Max, of the life I'd planned. "I can't," I whispered, and his face fell. The breaking point came at the Thompsons. Max was asleep, and Ethan and I were in the kitchen, arguing in hushed tones. "You're choosing them over us," he said, his voice raw. "I'm not choosing," I snapped. "I'm trying to survive." He grabbed my hand, pulling me close. "Surviving isn't living, Jamie." Before I could respond, headlights flashed through the window. Max's parents, home early. We sprang apart, but the look in Mrs. Thompson's eyes as she walked in told me she'd seen enough. Mrs. Thompson didn't say anything that night, but her silence was worse than words. The next day, she called, her voice polite but cold. "We won't need you to babysit anymore, Jamie." My heart sank. I knew it wasn't about my work with Max. It was about Ethan, about what she'd seen. I hung up, my hand shaking, and texted Ethan. He didn't respond. I found him at the quarry, sitting on a rock, staring at the water. "They know," I said, my voice barely audible. He nodded, his face unreadable. "My mom's always known about me," he said. "She's just waiting for me to leave again." The pain in his voice cut through me, and I realized how much he'd been carrying alone. I reached for him, but he pulled away. "You don't get it, Jamie. This tone, it chews up people like us." I wanted to fight for him, for us, but the weight of everything, me parents, the rumors, the locker crushed me. That night, I came home to find my parents waiting in the living room. "We need to talk," my dad said, his voice like steel. They'd heard the gossip, seen the texts. "Is it true?" my mom asked, her eyes wet. I couldn't lie anymore. "Yes," I said, and the word felt like a confession and a release all at once. The fight was brutal. My dad yelled about shame, about God, about fixing me. My mom just cried. I left, slamming the door, and ran to Ethan's. He was in his room, packing a bag. "I'm done with this place," he said, his voice flat. I grabbed his arm. "Don't go." Not without me. He looked at me, his eyes softening, and for a moment, I thought we could make it. But then his phone buzzed his dad, demanding he leave for good. Ethan's face hardened. You should go home, Jamie, he said, and my heart broke. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I wandered the streets, the cold biting through my jacket, Ethan's words echoing in my head. By dawn, I was at the park, sitting on the swings where we talked about dreams and freedom. I texted Sarah, desperate for an anchor. She met me, her face pale but kind. You should have told me, she said, hugging me. For the first time, I let myself cry, the weight of my secret spilling out. Sarah took me to her place, where I crashed on her couch. Her mom didn't ask questions, just made me coffee and left me alone. I tried calling Ethan, but his phone was off. Panic clawed at Miah was really leaving. I went to the Thompsons, but Max answered the door, his eyes wide. Ethan's gone, he said, and my knees buckled. Mrs. Thompson appeared, her face tight. He's not good for you, Jamie, she said, but I walked away, her words meaningless. I spent days searching for him his old haunts. The quarry, the creek. Nothing. The town felt emptier without him, but the rumors didn't stop. Kids at school stared. Teachers whispered. My parents left voicemails, alternating between anger and pleas. I stayed with Sarah, avoiding them, avoiding myself. But one night, I found a note slipped under her door. In Ethan's handwriting, meet me at the quarry. Midnight. I went, my heart in my throat. He was there, his motorcycle parked nearby, his face bruised. My dad, he said simply, and I understood. We sat in silence, the stars above us, and I realized I couldn't lose him again. I'm coming with you, I said, my voice steady for the first time. He looked at me, hope and fear in his eyes. You sure? He asked. I nodded, and he pulled me close, his kiss a promise. We planned to leave in a week, after Ethan tied up loose ends. I went back home, facing my parents for the first time since the fight. It wasn't easy. My dad was quieter, my mom more open, but the rift was still there. We just want you to be safe, she said, and I nodded, knowing safety wasn't here anymore. I packed a bag, telling them I was staying with Sarah, but my real plan was with Ethan. School was unbearable, but Sarah stood by me, shutting down anyone who dared whisper. I told her everything, and she hugged me tight. Be happy, Jamie, she said, and I promised to keep in touch. The night before we left, I babysat Max one last time, sneaking into the Thompsons to say goodbye. He hugged me, oblivious to the storm, and I left a note for his parents, thanking them for everything. Ethan and I met at the quarry at dawn. He'd sold his motorcycle for cash, enough for bus tickets to New York. No looking back, he said, his hand in mine. The bus ride was long, but every mile felt like freedom. We talked about the future apartments, jobs, a life where we didn't have to hide. But fear lingered. What if we failed? What if the world was just as cruel outside this town? In New York, we found a cheap motel, pooling our savings. Ethan got a job at a diner, and I enrolled in community college. My dreams of NYU on hold, but not gone. We were together, and that was enough. But one night, Ethan came home late, his face pale. I saw Lucas, he said, his voice shaking. His past was catching up, and I realized our new life wasn't an escape, it was a beginning, with its own battles. Lucas wasn't a threat, just a ghost from Ethan's past, but his appearance shook us. Over coffee, Ethan told me everything, how Lucas had broken his heart, how he'd learned to guard it. I won't let that happen with you, he promised, and I believed him. We were stronger than our fears. stronger than the town we'd left behind. Months passed. New York was chaotic, overwhelming, but it was ours. We found a tiny apartment, walls thin enough to hear our neighbors' fights, but it was home. I studied, Ethan worked, and we built a life, piece by piece. Some days where hard money was tight, and old wounds surfaced, but we faced them together. I called my parents, tentative at first, and found them softening. My mom asking about my classes, my dad listening in silence. One evening, we went to a pride event, my first. The colors, the music, the peep light was like breathing for the first time. Ethan held my hand, unafraid, and I felt the weight of Ohio lift. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. Max sent me a drawing in the Miah spaceship, with a note saying he missed me. I framed it, a reminder of where I'd started. Looking back, that night babysitting Max changed everything. Ethan walking through that door, locking it behind him, wasn't just a moment, it was a spark. We'd fought for each other, for ourselves, against a world that wanted to keep us small. And we'd won, not by escaping, but by choosing to live, fully, as ourselves. In the end, love wasn't just the fire that burned, it was the light that led us home.